The cold rain dripped down the train station steps as Eli played his last note. Nobody stopped. Again, his guitar case lay open, 3 wet coins in the bottom. The 10th time he'd tried, the 10th time he'd go home with nothing. Eli dropped his head and felt like he'd hit the end. But that night had something else in store. If you love a real story of overcoming, go ahead and hit that like, because this one's gonna touch you deep, and let me know down in the comments where you're watching from. By day, Eli pushed a delivery cart through the streets of the old part of town. By night, he grabbed his guitar and headed to the station steps to try again. His hands stayed cracked from the cold and the work. He was 28, with the tired face of a man who'd already taken plenty of hits. But when his fingers touched the strings, something in him still stubbornly believed. The part of town where Eli lived was houses packed wall to wall, power lines strung from pole to pole. Early in the morning, it smelled of fresh bread from the bakery on the corner, the one little luxury he and his daughter gave themselves when there was change to spare. Eli knew every pothole on that street. He knew his own reflection less since he'd been avoiding it for a while. Back home in a cramped little room, Lucy was waiting. 8 years old, 2 crooked pigtails she tied herself. Every night the girl asked the same thing when he walked in. "Daddy, did anybody stop to hear you today?" And every night Eli found a way not to really answer. He'd hang the guitar on the nail in the wall and say tomorrow would be different. That guitar wasn't just any guitar. Hannah had saved up coin by coin to give it to him before she got sick. She used to say Eli's music was too good to die shut away in a drawer. When Hannah passed, he almost smashed that guitar against the wall. He didn't. He just couldn't play anymore without a knot rising in his throat. Deep down, Eli carried a debt nobody could see. On Hannah's last night, he'd gone out to play a party, chasing money they were short on. He came home late. She'd already slipped away alone. After that, every time nobody stopped to listen, it was like life confirming what he already thought, that he'd chosen music at the wrong moment. That 10th night, Eli had one more reason to be out there. The rent was past due. His landlord had told him flat out, pay up or get out. So he tuned the guitar with his hands shaking from the cold and started playing Lucy's favorite song. The steps were packed with people rushing to catch the train. Nobody looked, nobody stopped. He sang louder, as if the volume might pull somebody in. A man in a suit walked by and tossed a coin without even slowing his step. The coin missed the case and rolled down the stairs. Eli went after it on his knees, fishing that coin out of the dirty water on the step. That was when he saw himself, on his knees chasing a coin, and it hurt worse than any boo. The worst part wasn't even the empty pocket. It was the way people looked right through him, like he was part of the steps, the wall, the post. Eli had once been a young man full of dreams, dreaming of filling concert halls. Now he fought for the attention of people in a hurry and lost to a phone screen. Every song he swallowed unheard took a piece of the little courage he had left. When he stood up, the rain had picked up hard. The 3 coins in the bottom of the case wouldn't even buy bread. The train pulled away, taking the noise and leaving a heavy silence on the steps. Eli looked at the guitar like you look at a weight you can't carry anymore. He packed it all up soaking wet and walked home with his head down, no music left in it. There was an old man who always sat on the other side of the square. On a chipped bench in a coat full of holes, a paper cup in front of him. Old Walter, folks called him when they called him anything. Eli passed him every day and never paid him much mind. He figured they were 2 failures sharing the same cold ground. One begged for change, the other begged people to stop and listen. Old Walter had a habit. Every time a train rolled by, he'd close his eyes and tap his foot slow on the ground, keeping time to a song only he could hear. Eli noticed it from a distance and figured it was just some half-senile old man. He had no idea that foot-tapping the ground belonged to a man who'd once lived off music, exactly like him. Back home, Lucy was still awake. She saw her father walk in soaked and didn't ask anything that time. She went to the nail, took the guitar, dried it with the hem of her own shirt, and handed it back to him. "Play soft, just for me, Daddy." Eli wanted to say he was tired, but the girl had already sat on the floor, legs crossed, waiting. So he played. For the first time all day, somebody stopped to listen. That night, lying in the dark, Eli kept thinking about Hannah's face. She always said one thing he'd buried right along with her. A scar isn't something to be ashamed of, it's proof you survived. He had a whole lot of scars on the inside. But right then, all he could see was shame. The words sounded too pretty for a man on his knees fishing coins out of the rain. The days that followed were worse. The landlord knocked again, this time with a date set. Eli took on double shifts with the cart, and still the numbers wouldn't add up. The cold cracked the skin of his hands for good. Playing started to hurt his body, not just his soul. And an idea kept growing inside him like weeds in an empty lot. Selling Hannah's guitar. There was a man at the market who bought used instruments. He paid little, but he paid on the spot. Eli knew that guitar was worth more than the man would offer, not in money, in what it meant. But meaning didn't pay rent. And Lucy needed a roof over her head more than she needed music. That's how he talked himself into it, or at least that's what he told himself. That week, Lucy asked why her father had gotten so quiet. Eli crouched down to her height and lied with a smile. He said everything was fine. It was just the work wearing him out. The girl looked at him with those eyes that seemed to read you from the inside. "Daddy, promise me you won't stop playing." Eli hugged her so she wouldn't see his face. He promised nothing. The night before, he couldn't sleep. He lay there staring at the guitar on the nail, the varnish worn where Hannah's hand had passed 1,000 times. He remembered her picking that guitar at the shop, smiling like she'd bought the whole world. Selling it was burying Hannah all over again. But he'd already decided. He set the guitar in the case and closed the latches slow, like closing a coffin. In the morning, Eli cut through the square on his way to the market. He sat on a bench to work up the nerve before handing the guitar over to the man. The square was grey, the sky heavy with rain about to fall. Across the way, old Walter was there, on the same chipped bench as always, with the same empty cup. The two failures. Eli opened the case just to look at the guitar one last time. When he saw the instrument lying there, something tightened in his chest. He picked the guitar up. He thought about playing one last song before getting rid of it, like saying goodbye. His fingers went to the strings on their own, but halfway through the first note his voice broke. Eli stopped. He looked at his own cracked hands and felt like crying right there, in the middle of the square, in front of no one. He shut his eyes. He thought of Lucy asking if anybody had stopped to listen. He thought of the rent, of Hannah, of 10 nights of failing. It all came down on him at once. Eli put the guitar back in the case and closed the latches a second time. He stood up to leave, to get it over with. That was when a shadow fell across the ground in front of him. Old Walter had crossed the square. The old man stopped in front of the bench in no hurry, leaning on a limping step. Eli figured he'd come to ask for something, like always. Instead, the old man reached into the torn pocket of his coat. He pulled out 3 crumpled coins, a whole day's worth of holding out that cup, and he set those 3 coins down inside the open guitar case. Eli didn't understand. He tried to give them right back. "You need this more than I do." The old man shook his head real slow. Then he spoke in a rough voice, worn from being quiet too long. "For 3 months now I've been listening to you play from over there, son. You think nobody stops, but there's an old man here who stops every single day." Eli felt the ground shift under him. The old man sat down on the bench beside him with effort. He said in a few words that he'd been something else once in his life, that he'd played 2 years back, and that he'd given up one day as well. "I quit, son. And it's the only thing that still hurts. Not the coins I went without. The music I stopped playing." Eli looked at him and couldn't get a word out. Old Walter sat quiet a while, watching the square move. Then he spoke again, softer. "I didn't give you those 3 coins to help with your bill. I gave them so you'd see there's worth in what you do. If an old man who's got nothing digs in his pocket to hand it to you, it's because your music is worth something." Eli felt something warm rise in his eyes. It wasn't shame. Then old Walter pointed at Eli's cracked hand. "That hand of yours is covered in marks. I know what that is. Every one of them is a night you didn't give up." Eli looked down at his own hands, and for the first time, he didn't see shame there. He saw Hannah. He saw her words coming back whole. "A scar isn't something to be ashamed of. It's proof you survived." Eli opened the latches of the case again. His hand stopped on top of Hannah's guitar, the one he was going to sell that morning. He didn't sell it. He took the guitar out of the case, right there, in the wet square, and laid it across his lap. He looked at the old man who was waiting, and instead of leaving, Eli started to play. Not to earn a thing. He played because he was still alive. It wasn't magic. That day, other than old Walter, nobody else stopped. Eli went home with the old man's same crumpled coins in his pocket and the guitar on his back, not in the market man's hands. The rent was still past due. The hunger was still real, but something had turned inside him. Small, like a spark that isn't fire yet, but won't let the dark be total anymore. The next day, Eli did it different. Instead of playing with his head down for nobody, he pulled up a little stool and sat near old Walter. The two of them there, side by side, the old man with his cup and the young man with his guitar. Eli started playing for the old man, just for him, expecting no crowd. And playing like that, charging nobody anything, was when things began to change. Eli started playing new things. Songs he wrote himself about the neighborhood, about the rain, about a woman who saved up coins to give a guitar as a gift. People could feel it came from a real place. It wasn't a guy asking for money. It was a guy telling the story of his life over 6 strings. And a real life is the only thing that makes people in a hurry stop. A young woman waiting for the train stopped to listen because the way he played had changed. There was truth in it. She stayed till the end of the song and left a bill in the case. The next day, 2 boys stopped. Then an older couple. It wasn't a crowd. It was real people really stopping. And for everyone who stopped, Eli played like it was for Hannah. There were bad days too. There was the afternoon it poured hard and Eli came home with nothing, soaked, with Lucy burning up with fever and no money for medicine. That night, the urge to drop it all hit him again hard. But he remembered the old man in the square. He remembered the 3 coins. And instead of hanging the guitar on the nail, he played soft for Lucy until her fever broke in his arms. Little by little, the station steps became a spot. People started slowing down there, waiting for the music of the young man with the guitar. The case filled up enough to cover the rent and leave a little over for Lucy's ice cream on the weekend. Old Walter stayed on his bench across the way, listening from a distance. Now Eli knew he had at least one faithful listener every single day. On a sunny afternoon, a rare thing that winter, Eli asked Lucy to come with him to the square. The girl sat on the step next to the guitar, with her 2 crooked pigtails, and for the first time Eli didn't play hidden in the little room. He played for his daughter in front of everyone, no fear, no shame. Lucy clapped off the beat and laughed. It was the most beautiful sound he'd heard in years. At the end of that afternoon, Eli crossed the square with the guitar case in his hand. He went to old Walter's bench. Without saying much, he opened the case, took out the guitar, and held it out to the old man. "Play one, so you remember." The old man's hands trembled over the strings. It came out off-key, rough, beautiful, and old Walter's eyes lit up in a way they hadn't in a long time. The 2 of them stayed there until the sun dropped behind the buildings. The old man playing the best he could, Lucy clapping, Eli just listening. On that chipped bench, 3 people the world had tossed aside found each other. No audience, no camera, no money. There was music. And for the first time in a long time, Eli didn't feel the knot in his throat. He felt peace. One of those afternoons, the young woman who'd been the first to stop came back. She brought her phone, filmed a piece of the music and put it online. The video didn't go viral, didn't rack up 1 million views, but it traveled far enough for the owner of the bar on the corner to see it. And that's how, because of a woman who stopped one day, the door to a stage opened for Eli. The months went by and Eli's life changed color. He left the delivery cart when the bar owner asked him to play on Friday nights. It wasn't fame. It wasn't riches. It was a small stage, a chair, a tight little paycheck. But it was enough for him to look Lucy in the eyes and tell her at last that somebody had stopped to listen. Old Walter didn't live to see much after that. One cold morning, the chipped bench was empty. Eli never learned the old man's full name, or where he'd come from, or where he went. All that was left was the paper cup on the ground, and a hole that didn't close. Eli grieved that old man the way you grieve a father, and he understood that some people pass through your life just to lift you up and move on. Every Friday before he steps onto the bar's stage, Eli does the same thing. He takes 3 crumpled coins out of his pocket and drops them into an old paper cup he kept. Then he plays the first song, thinking about the empty bench in the square. even though the bench is far from there. It's his way of saying thank you, and it's his way of playing at last, with no shame for his own scars. Eli learned the hard way. Something simple. The bottom isn't always the end. Sometimes it's just the place where the right hand can finally reach you. And the one reaching out that hand is almost never the one you'd expect. It's the old man on the bench. It's the 8-year-old daughter. It's the words of someone already gone, coming back at the exact right moment. Now let me ask you something. Do you believe that kindness, even small, even from someone with almost nothing, can save a whole life? Tell me down in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story touched your heart, go ahead and hit that like button. Then subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story.